Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Live from some Wendy's parking lot in northern Florida, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Q&A day, sleeping Saturday, although we've been sleeping in all week because I've been on a road trip with Bhakti Justin and the kids.
Okay.
Coming back from California, drove in from Dallas yesterday. Another marathon drive. We're somewhere floating around Northern California, northern Florida right now. Follow my adventures at Raghunath on Instagram. And yeah, it's great. We had a great time at Nityananda Chandra and Krishna Mangal, his wife. Love these guys.
Right? Vaishnavas, right? This is what Vaishnava is, right? They
Oh my
greet
God,
you, they
yeah.
welcome you.
Greet them, fed us well, gave us to-go plates. It was so sweet.
Because they like to serve, right? They realize that that's where their happiness comes from, in service, right?
Yeah, beautiful altars and Krishna Mangala, so wonderful, deep Vaishnavi. And, it just, and for those who don't know, we have a whole community. We almost have like these Wisdom of the Sages subgroups. Everybody knows our Bhakti recovery group, which is like epic. It's like unprecedented. It's a 12-step group that works intimately with the concept of the higher power has form, which is Vaishnava philosophy. Then we have all these other study groups and book reading groups. And Nityananda Chandra does this incredible group, which now I'm extra inspired. I want to actually join his group on our platform, which is the Shloka study.
Shloka study.
He does
okay.
Shloka. Mara, do you know when that is? Shloka study?
He's meeting Saturday mornings at 11:30, I think, and also Wednesday evening at 8 p.m.
Yeah, this is great.
Twice.
Yeah. So
It seems like they send out notes to everybody and stuff like that too, or like videos.
Yeah, he's
or something.
good. He's like a pundit, and he's a great guy. And so, so we're doing our own little Shloka study in the van or in the pickup truck as we're driving across America. Bhakti Justin's learning the Chatur Shloki. He's doing pretty good. We're going to quiz him later.
Gita Chatur Shloki.
The Gita Chatur Shloki. He's going after Mara. He's going after Mara's number 2 spot there.
Right,
the Shloka study.
Little healthy competition there, maybe.
Healthy spiritual competition. And so anyway, that's part. If you want to join that community, it's patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. Truthfully, you can join for whatever you like. But there's some people that give, they give heartily. They feel like, I like what these guys are doing. I want to support them. And some people just can't give right now. And that's okay too. We wanted to make it for everybody that you can be just part of this community for even $1 a month.
Whatever you give, you're in.
You give from your heart. So it's patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. And thank you everybody for being part of that. And we have another great transcendentalist today joining us. And that's Dunya, who I'm going to see her and her husband and their little kid soon. Because we're heading to Alachua. Yeah, we're heading to Alachua. I think I'm going to do a program there in the evening. So if you're in Alachua area, I hope to see you. Contact Vera Budra or Jai Giridhari or Dunya, and they'll tell you where it is. And we're going to hang out with all my old peeps And Nitai Lieberman. I'm going to see the Nitai
Oh,
Lieberman there.
get out. And Gopi.
His mom contacted me.
That's so cool.
And I know I'm more friends with like a 7-year-old than I am his mother. That's sort of peculiar, but she's like, you don't know me, but you know my son. But I'm looking forward to seeing that family of transcendentalists as well. Hi, Dunya. Welcome to the show. Yeah. We bring Dunya in because she's a special.
She's smarter than us is one thing.
She is smarter. She's a therapist that deals especially in relationships.
Yeah, Dunya holds a master's degree in counselor education and holds a specialist degree in couples and family therapy. And she's passionate about developing therapeutic tools that incorporate Bhakti principles and practices as means of reconnecting with our essential nature.
So we've been deferring to her occasionally on Q&A, especially when things we feel like, you know what, let's get a trained professional Vaishnavi in here for this. And welcome, Dunya.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And good morning.
Good morning.
All right.
Should we dive right into this, everybody? And welcome everybody on Facebook. We do this on Facebook generally Saturdays and Sundays. But during the week, we do this on Zoom and on all podcast platforms. If you want to join us live on Zoom, this week at least, it's going to be at 8 a.m. Eastern time. Usually it's at 5. Okay, so that's just email Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Mara, who's our technical genius back there with a rolling pin in her hands.
Careful.
She will hook you up with the magical codes to enter into our labyrinth, our transcendental labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
Okay.
That's new. Okay. Should we start?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. We got a question, Dunya. This one was it's beyond our pay grade. We wanted to bring you in for this one. You ready? This is coming from Nate via email. And Nate writes, "Hello. Let me start off by saying that I've been listening to your podcast for a year now. And I generally believe that your podcast has made me a better person. I always feel happier after I listen to your podcast and spiritually uplifted. All my life, I have had intense dreams that I often find have meaning in them, and some good, some bad. Recently, I had an incredibly powerful dream that almost felt like I was on a psychedelic. Throughout the dream, I was constantly denying myself opportunities such as my dream job, quality time with my family, and new relationships, both platonic and romantic." It's quite a dream. It's like so much was going on.
Yeah, my dreams are never that deep. Sort of like, hey, you're in Vrindavan, watch out for the snake. That's as bad as it gets.
In every scenario I saw, I felt that I wasn't good enough for the reward that followed. So I would either run away from the opportunity or outright sabotage it. As I look back on the dream, I know that the visions I saw were trying to communicate how I have been feeling all my life. I constantly doubt myself and my abilities to such extremes that I know are unhealthy. It seems that no matter how much I try in life, there's a voice in my head telling me that I won't amount to anything and that I shouldn't even try. And it doesn't help that my parents reiterate this idea constantly. I fear how others view me. I truly believe that this state of mind is unhealthy, and I know it needs to change. I was hoping that you can share some wisdom or techniques on how I can overcome these feelings, whether it be books that I can read, a spiritual message, or a challenge to leave me with. I'm 20 years old, and I already have a lot of mistakes under my belt, but I'm doing my best to change that. I feel that this view I have of myself is holding me back from living my life to the fullest. Thank you very much." Okay, Dunya, any light you can shed on this?
Well, it's such a great question, and I think it's such a powerful time to be questioning our self-worth, like developmentally in terms of challenges that we have throughout our lifespan. 20 years old is like right at that moment where you're like, what is the meaning of life? What am I doing? So it's very appropriate. I want to put that into context. Developmentally, it's very appropriate to be around 20. And I think if you ask a lot of experienced spiritualists, 20 years old is probably a pivotal time when we were kind of questioning, like, what determines my self-worth? What is my connection to this universe, to creation, to my higher power? So it sounds like you're right on track, even though it's bringing up so many uncomfortable feelings. Developmentally, it makes a lot of sense that you're there. And the other thing that I kind of wanted to validate is that even in your dreams, your feelings of low self-worth don't feel good. And that's a really good cue. That means that that pattern or that message is starting to come unglued, right? From a psychological perspective, the stuff that's working for us, our defenses or the problematic thinking that we use to kind of get by in life, if we're okay with it, it stays in our subconscious and we can't really work on it. But when it comes to the surface and it starts to feel not okay and it generates a certain amount of kind of psychic friction, then it's good. It means that the corners are starting to come unglued, so to speak, on that pattern. So the fact that you don't like how it feels to have low self-worth is actually a great sign, because it means it can be worked with. In terms of, techniques, we would want you to get some support through counseling, stay plugged into a spiritual community where your actual worth, not based on relationships or accolades or work or any of these things that kind of came up on your dream, can be accurately reflected. So I think that might be a cool distinction to make in terms of like spiritual wisdom is your self-worth is never going to come from those things anyways, right? You may have great relationships or have a hard time in relationships. You may have a job that you love and brings you a lot of success, or a job that you love and brings you no success, or a job that you don't love and brings you all success, and so on. So there's going to be all kinds of combinations of the modes of nature that arrange themselves throughout your life. And if you're using that to determine your self-worth, it's going to be a problem, because categorically they're different. One thing has to do with material life and one thing has to do with your spirit. So anchoring yourself in spiritual culture that affirms your self-worth based only on your spiritual qualities is going to be the key to success. And at the same time, we want to address the fact that there are ways in which we need to operate in the world with a certain kind of confidence and capacity and self-worth in a material sense for us to be able to be successful. Otherwise, you will fall into those patterns of kind of self-sabotage and all that kind of thing. So it's important for you to get both sides of it, to really anchor down on what spiritual self-worth is, but then also to kind of take a look at maybe some counseling support and community support where I feel reflected by people who really care about me. I mean, I'm hearing that you're saying that your parents really reinforce this idea that you aren't good enough or that you're not going to be successful. And that goes to show how important these early voices are in our minds and how the messages of others can really stick. That association can really stick. So consciously choosing to surround myself by people who see me even for the potential that I can't see myself for. And a lot of times our spiritual teachers and our spiritual community will do that. I think probably everybody here has experienced a spiritual mentor or teacher attributing qualities to us that we know we actually don't have yet, but they see with the eyes of potential. So they can see us for what we can do, especially our spiritual potential. And to be around that, that can actually be empowering because it helps us to kind of reach that next level that seems inaccessible to us. So kind of in a nutshell. And one author that came to mind that I think might be really helpful is Bhakti-yogi Swami. He has in so many of his books, he addresses the power of like the dream realm. And it sounds like dreams are like very potent for you. So he actually addresses that. I'm not sure in which book, but in one of his spiritual warrior books, he addresses how reading too much into the meaning of dreams becomes problematic because we interpret our dreams based on our culture. So when in your waking state, when you interpret it, it's based on what your culture is kind of telling you. And that as you kind of grow and accelerate in your spiritual life, your dreams actually become spiritualized, and you can do things, you can actually do service in your dreams that you can't do in your waking state, like go on pilgrimage and serve people and do things and go places that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to do, because it's like a huge chunk of your life. It's like a third of your life is spent sleeping. So learning how to use that dream space as a place for seva, specifically with this one listener, I think that could be like super transformational. So maybe checking out Bhakti-yogi Swami and seeing if anything rings a bell there. He's got awesome books out there about
Wow.
that.
You know, I have a question related to this, Dunya. That it's mentioned here by Nate that his parents reiterate this feeling of lack of value or whatever it is. It's I would imagine it's likely that they're not only that it may be originating in them. That it may and maybe it's not uncommon for parents to speak in such ways to their kids that they're trying to help them, but actually they're harming them. Like, but through some sort of criticism that they hope is going to be motivating.
Right.
That they're actually kind of like scarring them in some way, and I would assume that that's a common thing, and as a child that's or here's a 20-year-old, but like as the son of parents that might have treated one that way, is there a way that they should understand their parents? Like I would imagine it's easy to develop resentment when maybe it was all the intention behind it may have been good, maybe, and maybe not, I don't know, but is there a way that one has to look at how they've been spoken to and try to put it in a certain context and put it behind them maybe?
Yeah, so I think that, it's the goal is always going to be forgiveness and compassion for our parents' mistakes, because they're human and because we want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they were doing the best they could with what they had at the time. And they may have suffered trauma. There's that generational trauma line of who knows what their upbringing was like, and so on and so forth. But generally speaking, in terms of self-worth, before you can get to that place of forgiveness, you first have to kind of take care of your own basic kind of primal needs, because otherwise the wound stays very open and you're very much other focused, right? While I'm worrying about what my parents are thinking and saying and what they, raised me with, and that voice of my parent is bouncing around in my head. And it doesn't matter if this person is 20 or if this person is 75. Those messages are so important and they're so powerful. They can stay with us a whole lifetime. So it's first recognizing that voice is foreign to my essential nature. That voice bounces around in my mind. It was programmed very early. And I don't necessarily need to follow suit with what that voice is saying. However, I need the voice of a healthy parent to rise up in my mind. So this is the work of reparenting or inner child work. It goes by, so many names. But essentially it's saying, I need to acknowledge the ways in which perhaps I wasn't supported or seen or valued or heard throughout my childhood, and now provide that for myself. The work of an adult, psychologically speaking, is to reparent ourselves, is to be for ourselves that healthy parent. So that might mean healthy boundaries, self-love, good association, taking care of my body, being responsible, being dependable, all of these things that maybe we didn't feel growing up. So that work of reparenting means I really need to show up for myself. And that's not going to happen in a vacuum. I need that to happen with good examples around me. And then eventually through reparenting myself and healing and kind of doing this inner work where I really nurture myself and treat myself according to the ideals and the values that I actually hold dear, then little by little, I may be able to see my parents and say, wow, you were going through a rough time, or you had your own trauma, or you didn't know exactly what I needed and you couldn't figure me out, or, et cetera, et cetera. That space for forgiveness will certainly be there. And it will be a reflection of how much healing and work I've done with myself, which will always be kind of that first step.
Wow. Thank you, Dunya, for that thorough answer.
Lucid.
What's that?
Lucids.
Lucid,
What a great speaker. Huh?
Yeah.
Love listening to you, Dunya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're ready for some of your lucidity, Raghunath. Are you ready? I got
I'm a little foggy, but I'll try something. Hey, can you hear me okay? Should I take one of these headphones out?
It's pretty good.
Right here. Put it back. All right.
This is coming from our friend, Bruna.
Bruna G from Brazil.
From South America, from Brazil, living in Ireland, longtime Zoomer, old school Super Soul Sacred Sangha listener.
Yeah,
Bruna.
She's been poking around for years.
That's right. Well, she's got a question. It's for you, and we need to hear from you. You ready?
Yeah.
Bruna writes, since 2013, I've been moving countries, and I've been quite happy in places where I've been. I've lived in Italy in different chunks of time, from 2014 until 2017, and then a few months in 2019, and now I'm back in Italy, hoping to stay here for good, but I find myself quite unsupported by the local community. I feel unappreciated, and for most of the time, like a fish out of water. I put effort to mingle with locals. I've joined associations. I participated in many groups and associations of all sorts of things that I'm interested in: religion, bicycles, environment, refugee support, meditation, to name a few. But I feel as if I could die today and nobody would even realize. I do have a few friends, but they're in their 60s, and I can't just knock on their door whenever I feel like it. I feel wrong in here. And my question is, here comes the question. Should I use a discomforting situation to grow despite the lack of support from the community? Or is it important to find a community that supports us so we can get the best of ourselves? How do I weigh the importance of a community in my life? Wisdom of the Sages has been a huge savior, but I miss hugs and sitting with friends, just passing time. Thank you all for existing and for your service and for being part of my life. Bruno.
And I'm going to pass this one to Dunya. I would say, we love Brunaji. It's one of these things culturally where if you're not from a particular culture, some cultures aren't so embracing, or they're embracing as a tourist. But there's just sometimes so many cultural hurdles to overcome. It's sometimes hard to connect. I find that even within a Bhakti society, just there's cultural differences. That being said, I love Italy, but I've never lived there, as a permanent resident. Been there millions of times, stayed there for like a month, but never lived there. So I can't speak for that. All the places I've actually lived, for the most part, even in Krishna temples in India, there's a lot of Westerners, a lot of foreigners, and it's still almost like an exotic vacation. But I will say there are cultural barriers still, with devotees from. You have to dig deep to find some deep connection, and this is what I think this is the best answer I could give. There's people that I don't jive with, period. That I just don't jive with. Even people practicing bhakti on a spiritual path. But when you're very, very focused on a spiritual mission, you can overcome all those material things. And Kaustubha can probably pick out a handful of people in my life that he knows I didn't get along with, but we just got focused and we got to serve, and wonderful things happen from that. That being said, we're not always in that time where where everybody's on the same spiritual vision. And so that there's always going to be a hurdle there. There's always maybe a hurdle there. And you have to find that balance with, what? I love it here. I love what I do here, but I'm going to seek my spiritual community and upliftment somewhere else. Maybe it's Wisdom of Sages. We actually have a wonderful community here. I just stumbled into Dallas and had all these people close to me that I feel like they're old friends of mine. And we can sort of rebirth our community. But and maybe you don't have a huge community in Italy, but you have one or two people in your life that you can go real deep with. Sometimes you don't have to go so wide, but you can go very deep with just a few. And Brunaji, you're definitely part of our community here. I don't know. That's the best I can do to answer that one, because there's certain places you go, sometimes you're an outsider and you never feel even if you live in upstate New York or Maine, or if you're not from upstate New York. I've been living in upstate New York for almost 15 years. If you weren't born here, you're not from there. You know what I mean? There's a feeling that with local people, you're not actually from here, you're an outsider. Or to speak of being a weekender, that's the really lowest insult you'll get. Right? Mara knows the deal as weekenders. We don't even like weekenders. So, people are going to be like that. But I feel like you just gotta. There are people with depth and spiritual insight that you just got to search them out, and you might not have millions of them, but you might have a couple wonderful people.
All right, Rogan, thank you.
I don't know if that was good. Do you mind reading your own question, or Dunya can read it to
No,
you?
I don't mind.
All right,
You
sorry
have a
about
little
that.
trouble there on the road, yeah.
It's a road day today.
Okay.
Hey, we're gonna go visit. We're gonna go visit Bhakti Henry, Haridas,
Oh, on your way back
in
up.
Washington D.C. Yeah,
Oh man.
and
you
we're gonna
see-
have Nishringa. We're gonna have Nishringa Chaturdashi in Washington
Together.
D.C. Together
That's
in
nice.
Washington D.C. at the Potomac Temple.
Look at you. Oh, and you could do a program in Alachua tonight. Is it tonight?
If they set it up, I'm doing it.
No, I saw it advertised.
Oh, really? All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dunya. Thank you, Dunya and friends. I'll just do anything where they feed me. So.
Okay. All right. This next question is coming from our friend Cherry Yannick, Daily Zoomer. She wrote via email. She says, "Thank you so much to the three of you." Let me start over again. Thank you so much to the three of you for all of your devoted service, for putting on a show that means so much to so many people. Well, thank you for saying that. It has served as a stable morning ritual for me for over a year now. I have a question for Kaustubha Ji. That's me. I'm having a hard time handling much of the sadness in the world and feeling lost, searching for answers of why. I have to have some level of knowing what's going on in the world because of my job. So it's unavoidable, all the pain. The non-stop mass shootings in America, especially heartbreaking when you're a school librarian and doing school shooting drills with terrified children. COVID.
God.
Yeah, COVID. Oh, how heartbreaking. And now the explosion of COVID in India. I'm an empath, and I can't help but absorb and be so overwhelmed with sadness. What can I do? What can I turn to for comfort? What do you recommend? I feel so overwhelmed that it's hard not to be enveloped in sadness. Also, do you have any suggestions on anything we can do for those in India struggling right now with COVID? I have so many friends there who have been sick and even in the hospital, and I know that there are so many who need help. Do you have any recommended places for donations? Okay.
Let's do a fundraiser. Wisdom Sages fundraiser.
Okay, we could talk about that. Already, maybe we should go ahead and speak on that part of the question first, just on a practical level. I just reached out and asked some friends if they knew any places to give, and there are a couple organizations that are close to us that we trust and that really want to help, and they're giving you options of different ways that you can help. So one is Food for Life Vrindavan. They're making like an emergency outreach kind of COVID relief effort, and if you would like to see what they're doing, you can check out. It's foodforlifevrindavan.org. It's FFLV, Food for Life Vrindavan, FFLV.org. And then out of the Bhakti-yogi Manor in England, they've started something called Lotus Trust COVID-19 Appeal. And so if you Google that, Lotus Trust COVID-19, then they're showing all the different ways that they're trying to help people as well there. So those are two places, if you'd like to help, I'd recommend going. People that, we know and trust. And now let's look at the larger question, which was, about feeling overwhelmed with sadness due to the news in the world. And, I appreciate what you're feeling, Sherry. And that feeling, there's a term, in a Sanskrit term, a term that's found in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is that's our source, right? That's where we go to get our insight. And that term is para, dukkha, dukhi. It means that a person like a Vaishnava, a Bhakti-yogi, by nature, they feel suffering when others are suffering, right? They're not callous, right? Like the practice of Bhakti Yoga is supposed to make that heart softer and softer and softer, so that when in one sense, you're feeling, and this is kind of maybe what I'm about to say right now is a little subtle, but I think it gets to the heart of your question. And that is that we hear that of a bhakti yogi. On one hand, they're feeling happiness that's coming from within, right? This is called antasukha, that their happiness is an internal thing. And that's something, because it's spiritual, because it's their nature, it's something that's always there. It's not dependent. It's not like, well, it's a sunny day today, so I feel happy. It's a cloudy day today, I don't feel happy. But because they're connected on that spiritual level, and they're feeling their spiritual nature, they always feel happiness. And at the same time, we hear that they're para dukkha dukhi, that when they see the sufferings of others, well, then they feel that suffering themselves. So how is it? It's like, how is it both? Well, the fact is, it is both. Somehow we have to understand that it is both. That a true bhakti yogi simultaneously has one foot in the spiritual world and one foot in the material world. It's like we move through this world on our own. We feel everything that I need, I have, right? By nature, right? I'm well situated. I couldn't be better situated because I am the energy of God. I have an eternal relationship with God. And I see God in everyone. And I do have, meaningful relationships. And I've got the Bhagavatam there. And I've got, everything in my life is meaningful. The food that I prepare and offer and eat is all so pleasing and wonderful. And the whole process is enlivening. And I have some meaningful service that I do that gives my life very clear purpose, and so I feel good, right? I feel good, and at the same time, we see suffering, and we're meant to feel that. If we're not feeling that, then we're really not quite there yet. If we're callous to the sufferings of others, we really haven't developed the Vaishnava's heart. The true heart of a bhakti yogi. So, in one sense, my answer to Cherry is that feeling of compassion is not something that you want to rid yourself of. It's part of the nature of the bhakti yogi. But when you use the term overwhelmed, what that makes me think is like you're saying that it might make one not only like two things. It may make one forgetful of their true nature, out of touch with spiritual reality. As well as it might be on the material level disempowering, or like where one becomes idle just because they're so lost in negative thoughts, negative loops, and so on. So now I get it, like the news that we're reading, as in these years, it seems to just be getting worse and worse, right? And you've mentioned two things, and we could go ahead and mention so many other things. But you mentioned COVID, and you mentioned these mass shootings, and they're both, so much suffering has developed through both of these. You don't need to let go of that suffering. You can feel that pain in your heart, but feel it in context of what the Bhagavatam is providing us. Feel it in the context of the wisdom. You asked in your question, where can I turn? I forget. Yeah, where can I turn for comfort? Well, where I turn for comfort is in, especially the wisdom that's coming down in this tradition, and it's coming on different levels. There's that very practical information that on a daily level we should contemplate, right? Philosophically, how do I understand this situation? I understand that this material world by nature is a place of suffering. I shouldn't be shocked by that. When I see suffering here, I should expect this place to be a world of suffering. But I should know that suffering can become a positive thing when we know how to digest it, when we know how to understand it. So there's a feeling that these apparently contradictory things don't have to be contradictory for a devotee. We can simultaneously embrace both. We can step outside and say, this is a beautiful world. I know there's suffering in it, but there's so much beauty in it. There's so much love here. There's nothing lacking in one sense. and at the same time I can see the suffering and pain of others and want to relieve it, right? On one hand, I can be practically engaged here and directly trying to relieve that suffering, and on another level, and this is something that the materialists won't understand, I'm living in the spiritual world, right? I'm reading about Krishna's pastimes every day, and I'm relishing Krishna's pastimes, right? And I'm looking at the form of Krishna in the temple and hearing those pastimes and hearing these songs, and I'm living in the spiritual world, right? Where there's no suffering. That's I wouldn't call that escapism. I would call it, actually, that's the deeper reality. It's the deeper, this is esoteric. It's not easy for everyone to understand, but that's the deeper reality. When you can get that perspective where you zoom out and you see everything in perspective, you're going to see COVID, and you're going to see so many other difficult things that happen in this world. You're going to recognize them. You're going to feel the suffering of others, but you're also going to see them in a much broader perspective of part of a world that by nature is a world of suffering. And at the same time knowing that it's something that we can all wake up from. It's something that we can all transcend, and it's not that far away from us. So where can you turn for comfort? Turn to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Turn to Krishna's pastimes there. Meditate on them. Turn to the holy name. Turn to your friends that are deeply spiritual. Spend time with them. You'll find your comfort there. Don't go stretches of time without. That should be daily. That should be powerful. That should be strong. A constant connection for you. And then when you feel that pain in your heart, feel it. Go ahead, feel it fully. And serve in whatever way that you can. And that's how we pass through this world, right? We've got our mind focused on the spiritual, but we're also engaged right here and now, trying to help others. And one last thing is that it's not that we live in this state of mind constantly, but sometimes a devotee feels, what? Like Prabhupada, he once said to one of his disciples, he said, this material world, he said, is no place for a gentleman. Right? It's just like...
Love that. That's
right?
Such a good statement.
Yeah, if you think, if you're a little refined, if you're a little sensitive, if you're, if you care about, then the way that this world works is, we should feel a little bit in our heart, even every day to some degree, just like, what? Enough of this world, enough, right? It like, and you feel that, and it creates a spiritual desire within you to transcend. And that doesn't mean that we turn our back on this world. That doesn't mean we spiritually bypass. But that's like a ray of reality too. It's a ray of reality that, in one sense, I am a fish. Like Bruna used that term in her question. In one sense, I am a fish out of water. I want nothing but spiritual truth and divine love, and I'm living in a world where it's spinning in the opposite direction. So if you feel that, let those feelings be, let them churn in your heart a little bit, and let that create a deeper, intense desire, ultimately just to enter into the realm of divine love. Okay.
Oh, Kaustubha, we are bombarded by life is good and positive mental attitude, almost like propaganda.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like you got to lower the bar of material expectations and raise the bar of our spiritual expectations. Material world is a crumbling sandcastle.
Right.
And if our great faith is in and of the material world, we're setting ourselves up for disaster. And because it's propagated by slogans and social media and everyone's highlight reel of their good times and their vacations and their road trips, and you get this overwhelming feeling like, what am I doing wrong? Why aren't I happy? Why aren't I, why am I suffering? And then that can trigger more isolation, where I don't reach out, like you said, find those community, find those people that you can connect with on a regular basis. And you can really get depressed and overwhelmed. But the material world is not supposed to be heaven on earth, right? Our concept of shanti or peace is not outside. All you got to do is read a history book. The external world is a world of war. Our shanti comes from drawing the senses within and finding our connection with community and self. and we're almost like poked with a stick. What's the matter with you? Why aren't you enjoying the world? Why are you worrying about every, because that's what the world is in.
Yeah.
The state of the material world will always be in.
I think it's if you study the stories, the biographies of great saints, in various traditions, that they pass through a period where like they just feel, my God, this world is just so bad. They almost go through like some internal crisis, but that they grow out of that, right, and then be an instrument of compassion through it.
Sure. And also, we also have a universe that you can affect people within your universe with that love, and that's your contribution as well. But she made a great point though, which is, you feel overwhelmed. You feel, what's the word she said, that
Overwhelmed, yeah.
overwhelmed with it, like you feel like, now I'm paralyzed. There's like this.
That's what I was looking for. Don't become paralyzed by it.
Don't become paralyzed by it.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, Kaustubha.
Thank you. And thank you, Cherry, for the question. Okay.
Thank everyone.
Well, now we want to thank Dunya because we got another hard question for her.
Okay.
You ready, Dunya?
I'm ready.
Okay. So this is coming from an anonymous listener. And they write, as a Vaishnava, as a Bhakti-yogi, and really just someone who wants to be a good person, I know I'm supposed to have compassion for every living being. However, I'm having a hard time having compassion with one person in my life.
Yeah.
I truly love this person and just want to see them succeed and grow. However, a little over 8 years ago, this person lost their mother suddenly. Since then, their mental health has been on a steady decline. Along with that, they always seem to be a victim. Everyone is always mean to them. Even advice such as it may be easier to do X this way is seen as a personal attack. All the bad things happening are always a result of someone else's actions, never their own. These are just a few examples. I understand that this person has been through a lot over the last few years, but it doesn't seem that they're even trying to grow and get better. I was even told by them that they will, quote, never be like they were before the passing of their mother. So just deal with it, right? So in other words, they said, look, since my mother passed away, I've changed. It's never going to change. So just deal with it. How do I continue to serve and have compassion for someone when I'm thinking, why should I? Wow, that's a real stark, honest question there.
Dealing with a person who's just gone bitter with the world.
Yeah. And Kaustubha, you were saying, there's so many situations in this world that rightfully make us bitter because there's so much real suffering, and the passing away of a loved one, especially a parent. I mean, it can be devastating. So there's no way to overstate the impact that loss can have on our psychology, on our functioning. So, just to kind of put that a little bit into context, grief is something that is complex. It's considered a complex set of symptoms. It's not linear, like here's my loss, and then over time I just get better and better and better, and then I'm just kind of over it, or I've integrated it. That's usually not how it works. It's usually more like a spiral, which means I'm going to be rotating around this same feeling or this same emotion or these same issues or crises over and over again. And hopefully that's at higher and higher levels of functioning. But it's not uncommon for it to cycle back. Now, wherever this person is on their grief journey, we can hold some understanding and some compassion for grief being complex and nonlinear. And by doing that, then you allow yourself a little bit of space from that expectation of like, it's been 8 years, or it's been 15 years, or it's been, whatever. We allow ourselves to kind of detach from that expectation, which can actually create suffering for us. But I do want to acknowledge that compassion fatigue is a real thing. People who work in healthcare, people who work in mental health care, in any of the kind of support services fields, they do experience something called compassion fatigue, which is I'm constantly immersed in the suffering of the world and the suffering of others. And it's burning me out because my heart is big, because I'm wide open, because I want to connect, because I want to help. and I want to try and find my role in this situation to be of service. And it's wasting that away because my compassion feels finite. And so we should know that to the extent that we expand our spiritual capacity, our capacity for compassion also expands. So it's kind of what Kaustubha, you were saying, which is it's not that by being spiritually developed, you become detached and aloof and cold to the suffering of the world. You actually feel it. It's very resonant within us. But the way that we process it is a little bit different. And the role that we see ourselves as having related to that also kind of changes. So, you know, in terms of this one specific relationship, it sounds like advice is not welcome. And it sounds like the person is taking it on as perhaps an attack, which might be the way that they're defending themselves from great suffering. So it sounds like boundaries would be really healthy to kind of put into place here, which is, what are the services and ways of connecting that I can do with this person where it's the least damage for them and it's the least damage for me? And then can I occupy that space with as much love and compassion as possible? And maybe that's very little contact for now, right? Maybe where they're at in their grief, I have to have as little contact as possible with this person in an intimate way, because I see that even the things that I do out of love seem to be harming them or seem to be triggering them. So out of actual true compassion for them to reduce their suffering, maybe I need to pull back a little bit. Even if what I'm doing is done with care, that boundary can also kind of help them not feel attacked or you know, whatever. And it also keeps my energy in, right? That's how we like to define boundaries, which is boundaries is not meant to keep other people out. It's actually meant to keep my psychic and spiritual energy in, right? So that I don't endure that compassion fatigue. So my boundary might be, this is how I interact with this person for the time being. It doesn't have to be indefinite, but for the time being. Try it out for a month, try it out for 6 weeks or something, reducing the amount of contact and the amount of input that I give them, but still holding a prayerful place for them in my heart and still wishing the best for them and still having that compassionate attitude. Perhaps my compassion can grow because I'm not constantly in that state of kind of friction or tension with that person. And the other thing that I'll kind of layer onto that, just to give it that kind of Gita, you know, foundation, is that, you know, Krishna says that we're entitled to do the work, but we're not entitled to the fruits of the work. And so when we care for somebody and we want to see that result, how attached are we? When we say something kind to somebody and we want them to thank us, when we serve somebody and we want to be seen for that or appreciated, there is that natural desire for reciprocity because we crave connection. And that's natural. But when we're serving somebody who's suffering, we should maybe hold this space of Krishna saying in the Gita that we're not actually entitled to those fruits. We're not serving that person so that their person in their current body and their current psychology can respond to us and make us feel validated.
Right.
Because then it's not selfless service. Selfless service is, I'm caring for this person because Krishna's in their heart. And I know that this pleases Krishna for me to be serving their intimate part and parcel. And that's actually taking myself way out of the center. And to an extent, it's kind of taking them out of the center too. It's putting Krishna back in the center. So seeing, you know, what is my relationship to the fruits of this service? And that might be a wake-up call. As much compassion as we also have our own anarthas, our own kind of undesirable tendencies, which is maybe I help so that I can be the helper. And where's my payoff in that? So being a little bit gentle with ourselves in that reflection, so it doesn't become kind of a U-turn into being harsh with ourselves. But yeah, just maybe holding that Gita wisdom as a counterpart to that boundary work and to that kind of space that we give ourselves.
Wow. You see, I wouldn't have been able to answer that question. I didn't know anything about the spiral. I didn't.
Me neither. And we're turning this into the Dunya show. What was that? What did she call that? The compassion
fatigue. Compassion fatigue.
Compassion fatigue.
Yeah, that's definitely a real
I'm stealing
thing.
that. I'm stealing that.
It's all yours.
Okay. Thank you, Dunya. Okay, and then I think we got time for one more. We don't have a lot of time, but are you ready, Raghu?
Depends what the question is.
Well, this is from our favorite jam and jelly maker, Yamuna Devi from Happy Girl Kitchen, in Northern California.
Yamuna Jelly? You call her.
Okay. She's got a question for you. She writes, thanks so much for all of your dedication to giving us Bhagavatam every day in a way that we can actually embrace it in our daily lives. It is really a game changer. Everything that I want to do is best... Okay, now here comes the question, right? Everything that I want to do is best during the Brahma Muhurta hours. That's the hours just before sunrise, right? The time is before 40
Sure.
minutes or so just before sunrise, technically, Brahma Muhurta. So everything that I want to do is best done during the Brahma Muhurta hours, and yet there's not enough time in the morning for that. I am left feeling frustrated because I cannot get up early enough. I'm a working mother of 2 kids, and it seems the earliest I can awake is 4:30 or 5 a.m. on a regular basis. I need to have time to chant my japa and to do some puja. So these are her meditations and rituals that she likes to do as part of her spiritual practice. But I also want to listen to my Guru Maharaj give class. He wants a little shavana in her life.
Sure.
And I want to study for Gita class that I'm taking. Okay, so a little bit more, shastric study, important too. And it is also, I want to study for the Gita class I'm taking. It is also the best time for me to do my running and yoga. But there's just not enough time. I need to leave every day at 7:15. Luckily, I get to listen to Wisdom of the Sages on my commute, and it fits in perfectly there. But the rest of my sadhana just does not fit into the rest of my day, as it is all best done in the morning hours. My question is this: how do people do it? How do they fit it all in and not sacrifice quality? Some days it gets really bad around here. Uh-oh, jelly's flying around that happy girl kitchen.
Jelly's flying around.
and I'm chanting Lord Nrsinga's prayers while changing my water cups, and I get asked a question from one of my kids about the day, and then I pick up without missing a beat after I respond. So, like, in other words, her rituals get interrupted by her motherly responsibilities, and it is just so much at once. And on the one hand, I love it because I feel my puja is part of my dynamic life and being a working mom, and it just fits in where it will. And on the other hand, there is a guilt that I do not dedicate enough time in the mornings to fully do my services. Help, Raghu. Help, Yamuna Devi over there at Happy Girl Kitchen. HappyGirlKitchen.com, by the way.
HappyGirlKitchen.com. Yamuna Jelly Devi Dasi. So good to see you here. And this is welcome Californians who have been others, but because we're going late the last couple of weeks because of the road trip, they're all on. So welcome, you guys. I get this question so much because, for years I'd studied books on yoga and, philosophy and sadhana. And you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this morning puja, and I'm going to do this pranayama practice. I'm going to have an asana practice, and I'm going to have and it goes on forever. Like, wait a second, when is there time to even live? If I do all these things that these books recommend, I'm not going to have time to do anything with my life. Is that what the goal is? Not do anything except yogic practices? And to this day, too, I mean, Wisdom of the Sages is a big part of my morning. I like to chant before I do Wisdom of the Sages. I like to, so I go in there with a sharp mind. I don't like to roll out of bed and just start doing it. And I like to do puja. Sometimes I get puja in before, and and then, I'm a father, and I have to I have fatherly responsibility. So my point is, I fall short, but I feel like if you reach high, of course you're going to fall short. You're reaching really high. I hear what you're saying, that you're prioritizing. You're even waking up early to do it, and you're just not going to fit it all in, but you're reaching high. And I think with bhakti, intention is everything. Intention is a great thing. And sometimes, a kid or an emergency, it seems like, you threw me off my path today. You had to go get a stomach ache and diarrhea or vomit through the night, and I got to take care of that now. I was doing my puja. But especially as a parent, we have to reframe a home run. We have to reframe what a win is. And our intention is there to show up on a regular basis for our spiritual connection. That's our real self-care, our spiritual connection, our meditation, our japa, our personal hearing and chanting. And then, of course, there's going to be family responsibilities, especially for a parent. And we should understand, those are also given to us to do lovingly. I always use that example of my dog, Gus, because I never wanted a dog, and my wife always wanted a dog. And I was like not a dog person, like a lot of the dog people on the show listening. I was a cat person. They're much more self-contained. But when my wife got this puppy, it was like losing my mind because I'm already dealing with a bunch of kids. To wake up early just to get a little japa in was like so hard for me to do in my household. And if you make one little noise, the dog will be like driving me insane. And I know, like, you dog people are like, what is wrong with you,
what a
callous-hearted,
hard-hearted
you
guy.
callous-hearted man. And it was the sweetest puppy. Gus was the sweetest puppy. And it took me 3 days, initially, when every time I'd walk down these stairs, and on these old upstate New York wooden houses with wooden steps. If you step on the wrong step in the right place, it starts like. It's like enough noise to wake up the whole household. So I had a whole like map of how to walk down the stairs without making any noise. And sure enough, every morning that puppy would be up, barking his head off, screaming. And I'm just like, I just need some peace just before everybody wakes up. It was so hard. And then after day 3 or day 4, maybe even day 5 of just chanting for peace, but wanting to kill a dog at the same time, I realized, I realized, like, why am I chanting anyway? I'm chanting for compassion. I'm chanting for understanding. I'm chanting for love. And here is God answering my prayers by sending me this being that I find annoying, but I'm here to love. And that's part of God has actually given me exactly what I need. And no, I'm not going to fit in everything today. I'm going to have to take care and love this being. And that's part of my spiritual practice today. And I had to get over, and I had to learn to love a dog that I didn't want to love in the first place. And now me and that dog are best friends. And I think Happy Girl Jelly is doing such a great job, Yamuna. And you may not fit it all in, but Krishna sees that sincere desire to be real. And it might not be the ideal thing, but it's real, and you're a genuine person. And that is what Krishna sees, that strong, beautiful desire to want to serve and be connected and take care of all the responsibilities you have. And in those responsibilities, there's another chamber of our heart opens up. And it's actually, even your question is such a beautiful question, because I know exactly, because your intention is actually being revealed. So thank you. I don't know if that was helpful, but I appreciate you.
That'll do it for today.
That was
Thank you so much, Dunya, for coming on the show with us. We're gonna be reaching out to you. These questions get harder all the time. We need you around here.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, everybody, for following my road trip. I'm looking forward to seeing Dunya and Bali and their sweet baby. And
that's tonight, huh?
Veer. Yeah, we're pulling into town in a few hours. We're somewhere.
I hear there's a lot of wisdom of the sages people in Alachua, so like you're gonna probably meet a lot of people that are into the show today, a lot of others.
Well, Nitai Lieberman's got a whole gang of kids he hangs out with.
He's dancing right now.
A little wisdom of the sages gang.